Hello and welcome to the 392nd edition of the Business of Story and the first episode of 2023, which marks 7.5 years of bringing you story artists from around the world to help you craft and tell compelling stories that sell. I'm your host, Park Howell, and today you'll learn how to turn your data into drama so that you actually connect with your audience on a deep emotional level to not just move them, but excite them to action. Benjamin Franklin once said that in this world, nothing is certain except death and taxes. I think I might add to that death, taxes, and insurance. You know, insurance to me, probably like you, is a necessary evil, and one most of us don't want to have to figure out, haggle over, pay for, and bitch about deductibles when our premiums already seem over the top. So to cushion the blow of insurance, we like to have a little gallows humor. Like in Maxine, one of my favorite cartoons, there's a little single cell of her with a puzzled look on her face and a quote. She says, "I hit the gym today, but I drove away because I don't have car insurance." Love that. So how do you make insurance appealing to customers when what most insurance salesmen sell is numbers? Our guest today has some thoughts on how you turn numbers into visceral experiences that your audience simply can't ignore.
Interactive graphics. People love that kind of stuff now. Movement, like some kind of movement. You know, even like taking like PowerPoint to the next level. Just some two-dimensional flat number on a screen, that's boring. Mm-hmm. So add some life to it. So I think that's the first thing. You catch people's attention. Okay, I want to look at that. That probably is important because you're emphasizing it. And then I think second is then that's where that story comes in.
Heather Pierce is the Community and Content Strategy Director at Leavitt Group, a top 20 national insurance company. She has been leading some form of marketing, communications, content development, PR, social media, and writing for nearly 20 years, and almost entirely in the insurance industry.
We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two.
Heather says she has seen the universe drastically change in how we market, communicate, and sell a product or idea to individuals and businesses, particularly in insurance, where you can learn a lot about human-centered storytelling from a get-go.
I've travelled all over the country talking about saving with Geico, but that's the important bit, isn't it? Showing up, saying, "Hello, fancy a nice chat." And then we talk like two old friends about sticky buns and all the savings you could get by bundling your home and car insurance. But here's the real secret. Eye contact. Do you feel that? We just had a moment.
She believes that storytelling is core to insurance, sales, and marketing. Otherwise, you're just pushing another commoditized policy with little to no emotional connection and impact. But turning your data into drama using storytelling takes practice. You got to find, form, and rehearse the right stories to tell at the right time, keeping those all top of mind. Otherwise, your communications can blow up in your face. And who's insured for that?
Liberty Mutual, take 96.
Liberty Mutual.
Cut.
What's the line?
Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance so you only pay for what you need.
I don't think that's it. Action. Liberty Mutual.
Cut.
Heather says the professionals who still think appealing to logic and reason by using numbers, charts, graphs, and stats are, well, stuck in the past.
My seminars are a great tool to help young homeowners who are turning into their parents. Now remember, they're not programs, they're TV shows. You woke up early. No one cares. Yes.
So I was using something called Home Quote Explorer from Progressive to easily compare home insurance rates. Was I hashtagging?
Progressive can't help you from becoming your parents, but we can help you compare rates on home insurance with Home Quote Explorer.
Guess what? The waiter doesn't need to know your name.
So today, you'll learn how to capture, craft, and tell human-centric stories, which are especially powerful in highly analytical professions like the insurance company. In fact, you can use storytelling as a communications insurance policy to protect you from...
and be better protected from mayhem. Like me.
All that and more with Heather Pierce to kick off 2023 right here on the Business of Story. Heather, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Park. Glad to be here.
This is a treat for me because in all of 2020, I have not yet had a chance to sit across from an interview subject, a guest, and today we're in your beautiful offices up here in Flagstaff, Arizona, the Leavitt Group, a very large insurance company. Thank you for being here. Why don't you give us a quick background on who is the Leavitt Group?
So the Leavitt Group is a national insurance brokerage firm. We're one of the top 20 largest insurance brokerages in the country, and we're based in Cedar City, Utah. The office we're in right now is just one of our affiliate locations. We have over, I think, 200 locations now across the country in 27 states. And Leavitt Group really focuses on serving the needs of business owners and also individuals and companies with commercial insurance, personal lines insurance, so people like you and I, and also employee benefits, so serving companies' needs to provide benefits to their people and their families.
Gotcha. And you are a communications professional that has how many years in the insurance world?
I have been in the insurance industry for just over 20 years now, all completely in communications, marketing, and sales enablement.
Is that both internal communications, external communications, and you mentioned sales enablement?
Yes, everything. And sales enablement is basically the communications part of supporting sales professionals. And so making them look good.
Hence, you are enabling their sales.
Exactly.
There you go. I'm really glad you're on the show today because my listeners have heard me over the last 7 years often say, turn data into drama. Or they'll hear me say, Heather, what's the first syllable in the word numbers?
Data? Numbers? You?
Syllable.
Oh, the first syllable in the word numbers. New or numb?
Numb.
Oh, I'm like, wait a minute, where are we going with this?
Numb. And I say that, and by the way, whenever I share that in workshops or keynotes or whatever, there's always a long pause in the crowd as they do the math. Numbers? Numb. And why do I do that? To make that point that the numbers make no sense to us unless we put them into the context of an emotional story so people can, really understand it. And that's why I'm so glad to have you here today, because the insurance industry, in my experience, and probably most people's experience, is completely and utterly number driven. And when someone is coming in to sell us on insurance, what do? They blast us with a bunch of numbers. Here's your, monthly fee. Here's your copay. Here's your deductible. And then if you do this, you can get supplemental here. Anyways, we get lost in the numbers. But you, over the last 20 years, have found a way around that. And so today we're going to explore your secret of turning data into drama. First question then on that. How did you get into the insurance industry in the first place after being a newly minted graduate in the communications world?
Well, actually, I wasn't planning on being in the communications world or in insurance for that matter. I actually wanted to work in the arts world. Ironically, I had started my degree program at ASU in communications, ended up with an art degree. Go figure. A couple of minors, anthropology being one of them, which I think has actually played a really important role
I bet.
over the course of my career. I happen to be a really great writer. And so I did try to, give it a go in the art world. It just didn't really pan out for me. And down in Phoenix, where I spent, a good portion of my life. And then I just happened to apply for a job that was in an insurance company. And it was in project management, actually. Anyway, that's kind of where I started my career. And I found almost immediately that even in project management, that communications just was my jam. And I stuck with that company and started my marketing and communications career with them. And I just went from there, and I never left.
Well, you've got this three-way intersection that really plays well to your skills and what you do, that the interest in writing and your ability to be a naturally good writer, studying communications, but then you've got that art degree. And like me, I've got a degree in music composition and theory, but I never made a dime as a composer. Yet everything I learned there, I've applied in my communications world. I've got a degree in communications as well. So you kind of did the same thing. And then you add to it the minor in anthropology that gives you a very good understanding of the people sitting across from you, I'd imagine.
Absolutely. And also, too, I'll add to this, I also have a minor in French. And so it's really interesting that, that was, 25 years ago. But anthropology, art history, and French have carried me through my career in the most craziest ways. And most people look at me and think, how did you end up as a communications marketing professional with that kind of background? And it's actually served me really well. I mean, really, to your point, anthropology, it's about people. It's about understanding human behavior. French, that's really just my love of language, but I love writing. And art history really gave me an opportunity to look at the world in a really creative way, like linearly.
I know, I can't say that word either.
I probably should not have said that word, but you get it. It basically is just, it gave me a different mindset to look at things. I'm not your typical, MBA, although what we're talking about today, turning data into drama, all of this work that I did in my undergrad years has just really helped drive everything that I've done and the way that I operate over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So,
when I ran my agency, Park & Co., for 20 years down in Arizona, we grew our staff, and at the peak, we were about 20 people. And we had an insurance guy that would come in and handle all of our insurance. And he was a super nice guy, really, really nice guy. And he would always tell us about his family. And he would, every year when he would come in, he would share with us the growth of his agency. And now he was a little race car driver and he was doing all these great things. But my people would push back and they would say, we don't understand him. We don't get him. He's in the room. He's rolling out the big healthcare plan. Now we have to go in and make all these decisions. And then even when we have one-on-ones with him, all he's doing is dropping a bunch of these numbers on us. And it freaks us out. We don't know what we're actually getting. And after servicing us for about 12 years, I had to let him go because I kept telling him, I go, you're a nice guy, but my people don't understand you. And so that is one of my major experiences with the insurance world. How do you help people in your line of work, or anybody that has to deal with a lot of numbers and share that communication around numbers out there? How do you help them humanize those numbers so they actually make sense?
So it's something that's taken me a long time to perfect, but insurance is complex. It's complicated for the people that have been in the industry for 20 years. I can't tell you how many times that I've sat there and said, I don't even get that. And I've worked in this business. And so one of the most important things when it comes down to insurance, whether it's employee benefits, it's business insurance, or even your own individual home policies, is making sense of the numbers, is making it relevant, because insurance is human-centric. It literally revolves around us in so many different ways. It is maybe a necessary evil, but it is necessary nonetheless. And our needs change over time. Also, the way that we understand insurance changes over time. Insurance itself changes over time. And so, being in this type of position and, having worked across a couple of different big carriers and companies, understanding who your audience is and how they're going to kind of consume that information, depending on what kind of insurance are they interested in. So let's use employee benefits, for example. It is not numbers that make sense to people. They see the numbers, they see the dollar sign. Sure, that's a copay, that's a premium, that's my deductible. But what does it mean when you have a deductible? What does it mean when you meet your deductible? Why do I have a copay for this doctor and not that one? And so what I've done over the years is really taking the human experience, actual human experiences, my actual own, by the way. I've used my own in some of the communications that I've put together on the behalf of for instance, the companies I've worked for. I'll give you a really great example. So I was with Aetna for 12 years, and I worked in their voluntary business unit. What that means is supplemental health insurance. So think critical illness, accident, hospital indemnity plans. Maybe someone listening to this right now is like, I don't even know what that is. Well, they're really great plans to have, particularly if you have a high deductible health plan.
And I want to underscore real quick, you were not selling insurance out there. You were working within their communications department to help them communicate these ideas both internally and externally.
Correct. Because even the sales teams that were out there saying, hey, company ABC, you should really have these supplemental health plans to go along with your high deductible health plans like an HSA or an HRA. And even they were like, okay, we're not really sure what this means. And so even they were struggling to get the HR benefits directors to understand what these plans were. And so what I did is I actually took some of my own life experiences. My son, who will remain nameless because of his age. He was playing soccer competitively at the time, and he broke his ankle. And I had accident insurance, thankfully, with an HSA plan. And so I had everything lined up well for me benefit-wise. Well, what I did, I actually used his actual story, literally what happened to him, to explain how the accident benefit would work for somebody. And so we created these 3 profiles. We created a story about my son for accident. We created a story about how when I was pregnant with him and was going to deliver him, how hospital indemnity helped me. We changed the names, of course, so it didn't say Heather. And then we created a story for critical illness, which was based on an individual being diagnosed with cancer. And so what we did is we created stories, or in this case, we're inspired by real ones. Mm-hmm. And we created these kind of one-sheet type of flyers, essentially. It was really basic. It was digital. And it explained the story and how we used the benefit to pay for our bills. And all of a sudden, it was just clicking. Mm-hmm. Not even joking, our enrollment in benefits skyrocketed. It was amazing. Because
you put the jargon of the name and the numbers associated with it into the context of a story that people can picture.
Yeah, they got it. They were like, oh, okay, this is like a real life story. This makes sense to me. Like my son broke his ankle at a soccer game. We had to take him into the ER. Here's all the benefits that I got as part of having that plan. Mm-hmm. And we even put numbers into like really simple stuff, right? With the story, with images. And then it was just like mind blown. And it was the easiest thing we could have done.
Did it blow your mind? Did you think it was going to be that effective?
No, actually. I mean, I knew it was going to work, but I didn't know it was going to work that well. Yeah. But it was just, the proof was right there. Yeah, it was great.
Earlier in your career, when you first got into it in 2002, when was there a moment maybe where you were first introduced to stories? Or maybe you introduced storytelling in the insurance world?
Oh my gosh, this is actually, I love this question. So the person that I worked for, the very first person I worked for in insurance, he was like the CEO's right-hand man. And by the way, this gentleman was a big player in the Medicaid universe. And he was my first mentor. And that man told stories. Literally everything was a story. That was actually my first experience. Mm-hmm. He lived his life in stories. Everything. He didn't just have a Nova. Let me take you for a ride in the Nova. And I'm going to tell you about a time when I was, 30 years old. And here's what happened in this car. So do you understand? It's just like everything was a story. Even the fact that he brought Krispy Kreme boxes of, donuts into the office every Friday. There was a story behind those Krispy Kreme donuts. So it had absolutely nothing to do with the work that I did. But it influenced me across the course of my career. I still think of Sam. His name was Sam. I still think of Sam so fondly. And he was my first professional storyteller influence.
And it sounds like Sam did it just intuitively.
Oh, it was.
Just the way he rolled.
It was who he was, how he spoke, and it was just him.
He didn't think about it, and we are all intuitive storytellers at different levels. But when we get into business, we often shut down that storyteller and we lead with logic and reason and numbers and data and charts and graphs and facts. that our limbic brain in our prospect just doesn't get. It's not wired for that sort of thing. And so what we always try to do is help people evolve from being an intuitive storyteller, as every Homo sapien is. I like to affectionately call them storytelling monkeys, into intentional ones using frameworks. Have you had a challenge with maybe the old guard out there in the insurance world of saying, no, Heather, this is the way we sell insurance, to get them to adopt story and to actually start using story?
Absolutely. So again, back in my time at Aetna, I worked in, I mentioned sales enablement. I worked on what we called a sales enablement team. And so essentially what I did was I supported our national sales team in basically all the work that they did to close deals. So a lot of that was presentations. Finalist presentation, standing in front of the room with the biggest decision makers at, the company that you're trying to pitch to, and, get them to essentially say, yeah, we want you to provide our employee benefits. And so there was a lot at stake. There's a lot of pressure. Well, we decided that we were going to change the way that they did these things, because what was happening is they were just standing at the front of a room and they were reading off of slides, a bunch of data, a bunch of words. It was crammed from corner to corner. And we said, no. You need to become a storyteller. You need to stand in front of that room, because we know that you know all of this great information. You're out there dealing with these, clients. You're hearing these stories, these real life stories that are impacting all of, the decisions that you're making for your clients. Like, you need this insurance because maybe your claims were really high this year. And so what we did is we challenged them to stop reading off the slides. And we created those presentations for them. And so we took the words off the slides and we gave them very, very little bits and pieces of information. It forced them to become a storyteller at the front of the room. And it made them much more effective presenters. And it ultimately came down to, because, by the way, when you're in that position at finalist, you're really not any better than your competitor. What's going to differentiate you? You're probably all just kind of, competing in the same price range. It's not about price at that point.
I mean, is there any more commoditized industry than insurance?
No. And so the story becomes the differentiator. What are you going to tell me that you did different? How do you handle this? And tell that story. How did I support that client? How did that client, being the employer, how did that employer maybe better support an employee who had maybe a chronic illness or something devastating happen to them, where their employee benefits came into play? Tell that story. And so that's what we started doing. And it changed it. It was hard. I was
going to say, did you get a lot of pushback at first?
Oh, yeah.
What was their biggest excuse not to tell a story?
Well, it's always worked this way. We've always done it this way, and that's what they were comfortable with. And we said, well, you can teach old dogs new tricks. And we did. And I always used to joke, it was like turning the Titanic, right? Like, that's huge, and not hit icebergs on the way. We certainly did. But it was really cool to see the transformation. And it took probably like about 2 years. But then once everybody was on board, they were like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. Like, I'm a more effective speaker. I have much more influence. And by the way, our presentations look great too.
And did you hear from anybody that would share with you an amazing success story after telling a story blew their mind? And I ask that because I've seen that time and time again. And with the business of story, we talk about the applied science, which are the frameworks. If you follow these frameworks, you'll be telling a story that leads to the bewitchery. And the one-word theme in all of my storytelling is about being enchanting or enchanted. And so often when people tell a story, they'll see that whole audience lean in. They'll get someone to sign on the dotted line, and they'll quickly pick up the phone, and sometimes call me and say, oh, my God, I thought it was kind of BS, Park, but you can't believe what happened. This magic takes place. Do you have some of those stories?
Yeah. So at Leavitt Group and my larger team, communications, media, and marketing, so we encompass a lot of different things. We have a video team. And they're absolutely amazing. And they use this beautiful way of storytelling through video. And that is primarily for our commercial insurance clients.
What's their secret? What do they do?
Oh, I'm telling you, Mike, our lead video guy, makes us cry every time, first of all. So he is pulling on the emotional heartstrings.
We buy with our hearts and
100%.
justify our purchase with our heads.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said before, and this is my whole shtick is that insurance is human centric. If you make it about them, right, then it becomes relevant and you get it. And so you can do that in so many different ways. So, I talked about like the printed pieces, the digital pieces, and then you have video. And so I've seen that done very beautifully here at Leavitt Group. And it's been primarily for our commercial clients. Mm-hmm. So
does he follow a template of sorts, or does he have a story framework that you're aware of, or is he just intuitively, innately creating these stories?
He's been doing it for so long, but I think he definitely has a formula. Mm-hmm. And what I have seen is that you kind of, you take this video, right? And again, these are commercial clients. So you think of, let's say it's a company up in Montana, right, who is a rancher, for example, mm-hmm. right? They've got their own set of problems and challenges. And what he does is he starts with the client, and they talk about their history, who they are, what kind of challenges they have. They don't start with the insurance agent who's serving them. They start with the client. We learn about who they are.
Placing your audience at the center of the story.
100%. Oh, that could be me up there, right? Like maybe I'm a rancher or I own some other kind of company in the same industry. Okay. Oh, yeah, I get that. That makes sense. I get that. That's me. And so he sets it up, right? You're making that connection. And then in walks the insurance agent or the broker, as we like to call them, or the consultant advisor. We've got a couple of different terms we like to use. Agent feels a little less than, I think, than what some of our people provide. But yeah, then he brings the insurance advisor into the story and sets up, okay, well, and here's who I am. Here's how I help them. And through all this video, you see them working together. It's all shot in natural settings, not just sitting all stuffy in a conference room. Like they are out there in the thick of it, whatever that business is doing, like on the job site. Mm-hmm. It's a really, really cool way of setting it up. And so then it becomes at the end. And if it wasn't for the advisement of my insurance person at, Leavitt Group, I could have been in a much worse situation because of, XYZ. It could be a number of things. And so that's really kind of the formula that you see for the most part and is so powerful. And honestly, your key player in that doesn't become the insurance agent. It's the client.
Yeah. It's a customer testimonial.
It is 100%.
But it's done literally from the customer's point of view. Mm-hmm. And so often people get messed up with their testimonials thinking it's all about us. They would show up, typically and say, Leavitt Group went to Montana and we have these amazing packages and we help Bob and Sally here and da-da-da. And it's all about them versus switching that paradigm.
Yeah.
And saying, no, it's about Bob and Sally.
The client is the star and the insurance advisor is kind of secondary.
Yeah, you're the mentor or guide.
Yeah.
You play a very, very important role in that story because everyone has a sidekick.
Yeah.
Batman had Robin, right?
Right.
Luke Skywalker had a whole cadre of sidekicks. Mm-hmm. But the story was always about Luke, and it was always about Batman. In 100%. This case, it's always about your customer. Yeah. And then when you share that with other people, they that are in a similar situation, like you said, they can live vicariously through Bob and Sally's story.
Exactly.
And they go, well, wait, if you did that for them, you could probably do that for us. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to do any chest pounding whatsoever.
Yeah.
You say, this is just what we did. This is what, we showed up, we provided this, here was the outcome. Is that the outcome you're looking for?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, anytime these videos are created, everyone's like, I want in on that right now. Can you do that for us?
Is that video on YouTube?
Oh, yeah.
So would you send me a link? We're going to embed it in the show notes so you listeners there can go and see some of Heather's work and their storytelling right there. That'd be great.
Yeah. I got a couple good ones for you.
Good. Tell us about, let's go back before Leavitt Group, and you were working with a Fortune 5 insurance company. Is that Aetna? Again, is that?
That would be Aetna, yes.
And you were talking about, you shared with me some thoughts about the ERG work you did there. Can you take our listeners to that? Share that story and what it has meant to you or has informed how you are as a communicator today.
Yeah, I was really lucky to be part of the Employee Resource Group organization, which is now called Strategic Diversity Management at Aetna. They've made it a very front and center there. And I just can't say enough good things about what Aetna does in that space. And I started just as a member of an employee resource group. It was a big company. And so the ERGs played a really great role for just people connecting with like-minded people because...
And was this like a voluntary role in there?
Well, being a member was certainly a voluntary role, but I immediately was like, oh, I need to be on the board and I'm going to run communications and this is for the women's group, by the way, which was the biggest, and I believe still is, the biggest ERG at Aetna. We were over 8,000 members when I left the company almost 2 years ago. But they had a group for everybody. You name it. You were probably represented. And so the ERGs were really important. I quickly moved into a board role and ran marketing and communications, of course, because that's my jam. And so I'm pretty proud of the work I did there. I had my job and then I had that work, which was truly the most meaningful and fulfilling experience that I ever had. And I did serve on the board for a couple of years, and then I was asked to become the co-chair of the entire ERG. I had another partner, Emily, who ran the whole group with me, and we've reported to the most powerful people in Aetna.
Is that intimidating?
I think it could have been. I'm not easily intimidated, so
I gather that.
I was like, oh, it's fine. It's just Larry, CEO of CVS, and Karen Lynch, who is now the CEO of the entire company, but she was just the president of Aetna at the time. And then ultimately Larry, he retired and Karen took over. By the way, she's like one of the most powerful, Fortune, I think 50 company women in the entire world. And I got to meet with her on a pretty regular basis.
And so you could let your guard down a little bit?
I could. It was really cool, actually. She was like the most laid back person. You would have never guessed that you were on the phone or video call with somebody in such power and having the position that she does. And that was the greatest part about her, is that I'm like, wow, I can just be myself. And just the authenticity that she exuded made it even that much easier for me to just be my authentic self, which I loved.
So in a world of data, charts, graphs, numbers, hard charging insurance agents and brokers and so forth, you found this humanity. Is it kind of what helped you really arrive at this whole human-centric approach to what you do in insurance? I
think so. Actually, being a part of the ERG, being on the board, and being in the role that I had where I was responsible for the success of the organization. We were the biggest, ERG there. Again, it was Aetna, and then CVS had acquired Aetna, and so we became CVS. And they played such an important role and still do within the entire company organization. That work was extremely important. And part of what we did to really connect this back to storytelling was in fact that. And so what we did a lot within the women's ERG, which was called Women Inspiring Success and Excellence, WISE for short, was using all different people across the organization. We created events that our members would be invited to, where we bring in all these different women across the company. I don't care if you were a customer service person on the front lines or you were a VP. And Aetna was a big company, so there was a lot of people to choose from. And we used them to basically push our mission forward, because I think what happens sometimes is that when people think about panelists or interviews, it's got to be some executive. It's got to be some very visible leader in the company. And we made it a point that it wasn't. We always included somebody that was important, that people knew their name, but we always included a lot of other people around the company, because I'm like, that's us. That's what we relate to. And that human piece of it became so more important in just getting the mission of WISE out there to the rest of the company. And then we became kind of the standard for all of the other ERG. Do what WISE is doing. do what all those women are doing over there, because they're getting it, and we're growing our membership. We had massively great engagement because we were talking about really personal, human-centric issues that mattered to us as females.
I love that approach to your rollout, and we have found success doing something very similar, exactly the same thing, when we would do big brand story development for large organizations, and then they're like, how do we get this incorporated into the overall group? And we would teach them story training using the elements from their new brand story so that they feel like they are co-authoring it a little bit, but we're teaching them also how to do it. And we're trying to, if we're pushing it through a 20,000 person organization, they would say, okay, so how do we do this? And to your point, the first thing the client would say is, let's get all the leaders. Let's get this VP and this senior manager and that VP. And we're like, no, we want your influencers. So yes, you might have 1 or 2 or 3 VPs and senior managers to have that, that level there. But who are the real influencers? It could be anyone from a janitor to a secretary, to a designer, to a coder. It could be anybody in this organization and say, that's who we want to get here because they already have your colleagues, your employees' ears. Yep. So if we can get them bought in and believing in it and hear their pros and cons on what we're doing here, number one, it's going to strengthen that brand story, but it's going to help really push the story training throughout the organization. It sounds like you did the same thing at Aetna.
Yeah, we definitely did. It was a great time. I love the work I did there. It was a lot of fun. We brought in some awesome speakers, and it was all about being real, being you, and just not some talking head at the front of the room.
Yeah.
And it was just, and we represented such a cross section of the people of Aetna. Yeah. And we highlighted women all the time, and it was amazing. It really was good stuff. I miss it, actually. I have a special spot in my heart for that work.
And we've got a listener out there that's saying, okay, that's all well and good, Heather, but I'm lost. I am a numbers person, guy, gal, or whatever. I don't get this storytelling thing. How does it work? What is 1, 2, or 3 things that they could do that you would coach them on and say, take a deep breath and start here?
So I would say first, most people are visual. Okay, so, you look at numbers. Numbers are so two-dimensional. Numbers make my brain hurt. I literally go into meltdown mode. And so I think just naturally, I try to find a way to make sense of numbers. And so for me, it is a visual approach. And I just think that you ask anybody, would you rather this be on a two-dimensional thing, or would you like to see something maybe a little bit more interactive, something you can actually engage with? So I think that's probably the number one step, right? When you think about data and numbers, find a way to visualize it, because people are going to inherently look for a way to visualize it, make sense of it somehow. That could be in interactive graphics. It could literally just be really good graphic design, right? I mean, just putting a percentage out there means nothing. But if you add visuals to it, it gives it context.
And are you talking like pie charts and that kind of stuff?
I think it could be as basic as a pie chart.
What's the coolest visual you've used to try to communicate a number?
I would say interactive graphics, right? Okay. People love that kind of stuff now. Movement, right? Some kind of movement. I've even taking PowerPoint to the next level. Just some two-dimensional flat number on a screen, that's boring. Mm-hmm. So add some life to it. So I think that's the first thing. You catch people's attention. Okay, I want to look at that, right? Mm-hmm. That probably is important because you're emphasizing it. And then I think second is then that's where that story comes in. Don't just say what the data is. Anybody can read that. I kind of go back to when I was talking earlier about the slide presentations that I was creating for the national sales team at Aetna, where we took all this information, all these bullet points and all these fine print off the slide, because no one's going to read that. Pull all that off. Use a story. Okay, why is this piece of data that I just emphasized visually, why is this important? Well, I'm going to give you a story about why, and you're going to be, oh, that makes so much sense.
And that story is about a real person.
It should be.
Something that really happened, yep. That had a real outcome,
yep.
That makes your business point for you.
I think so. And honestly, I think that most of us, if we give it a little bit of thought, you probably have a whole library of stories that can illustrate a point. Maybe it's not you personally, but maybe it's a friend, right? Maybe it's a family member. Maybe it's a colleague. Change their names, of course,
Yeah, and that's okay too. And a lot of people wonder about that, if that's cool. But we are also used to hearing stories of, let me tell you about someone, I'm going to call him Jim. And everybody's like, okay, this person actually exists, but they're just not sharing their name. So it's still a factual story. And that's okay.
Yeah, and if you're comfortable with using your own, then do it. I actually did that once in a meeting just to be a little bit more authentic. I actually used my own personal life photos in a pretty big meeting to say, hey, this actually happened and that's me. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
But that's the stuff that people connect with, If you can put yourself in somebody else's shoes, that's gold, right?
Yeah. You triggered something right there when you said that. When I was running Park & Co., we were a small to mid-sized agency in Phoenix, and we were out pitching a very large educational association that we really, really wanted to work with. And we went in, we did all of our due diligence, did our discovery. There were a lot of numbers in it, just the statistics of education in Arizona and how these folks could overcome some of these negative numbers. But when we put together our presentation, I put it together and I made my own people nervous. They were looking at me like, really? You want to do this? And what it was the story of my family and our life, and Michelle and our 3 kids, and the different experiences our 3 kids had going through both private and public schools in Arizona with very different outcomes from all 3 of them. And I started with that first picture of Michelle and I 20 years before with these little kids in our hands. And then as the presentation progressed, our photos of our family progressed to then the final graduation photos, and the problems we had along the way, that we truly understand and understood what this company was this organization was trying to do, and that we would be the agency to hire because we get it. Well, and I mean, literally, I had a few of my people go, really? That's what you're going to share? And I go, yeah, watch. Did it. Well, when we went in for our presentation before us, here's a very, very, very large agency in town, Leavitt. The Leavitt Group, right? Bill Leavitt and his team were in there, and they saw us walk into the lobby. And I mean, as they're presenting, a couple of them looked out like this, and they looked in. And I looked and I go, oh, crap, we're going up against Leavitt. That's going to be hard because they're really, really, really good. Well, went in, did my presentation. I got to tell you, too, Heather, I was feeling a little bit self-conscious when I was giving the presentation. It was total authenticity and vulnerability, but I knew it made my own people squirm. Was it going to make that room squirm, too? Were they going to look at it as being Pollyannish or whatever? Well, they didn't. They loved it. We got the business. And not 2 months ago, so this was a long time ago. This is when I was still running the agency. Not 2 months ago, their lead senior account executive, who now works with a big healthcare organization here in town, brought me in to do some training with their people, and then she pulled me aside. And she said, you don't know this, but we were pitching that same client, and we pitched ahead of you. When you walked in, we thought, oh, it's Park & Co. They're small. We've got this. And then we were blown away when you guys walked away with the business. And we had that business for 5 years, which is pretty good in the ad world. But it goes back to your point, and it's triggered that story in my mind of it was sold totally on here's our experience. Mm-hmm. Here's what we went through. Here's how it made us feel. And here's how we know that you have a really important mission in the world to correct this stuff, and we're the agency to help you do it.
Yeah.
The power of story.
I love that. And that's how you sell, right? That's how you get those deals. It's not by, I think I was talking about earlier, right, with Aetna, mm-hmm. where they were in these finalist presentations. At that point, it wasn't about pricing. Yeah. It was about who you are. Like, what is your story? What's
You're
your
buying the person?
What are those differentiators that you might present in a very creative way like that, and then you win.
Yeah.
So that's the way to. I'm a believer in that. I've seen it work so many times.
Yeah.
We're all just human.
It almost never not works.
Right. I mean,
It is just so darn effective, but we tend to push emotional storytelling to the side in business because I believe that we want to show up, we want to look smart, we want to sound logical, we want to sound reasonable, so we go to the numbers.
Right.
When our audience wants just the exact opposite, and they don't even know it a lot of the times.
Right.
You got to put those numbers into context for us. One example I'll use quite a bit with people when they look at me, I'm like, oh, come on, Park, it's all about the numbers. And I think, well, think about the weather report. So you go on your phone, you pull up the weather app, and the data, the numbers in there do one of three things. It either reports on an event that happened, tells you what the weather was yesterday with all the numbers. It monitors an event that is currently happening. So here we are in your office. It's about 11:30 in the morning on, is it Tuesday? Wednesday. Wednesday. And it's driving into Flagstaff, Arizona. It was 46 degrees out. We had a lot of wind yesterday. There's maybe a 2-mile-an-hour wind today. Beautiful sunny day. Supposed to be cloudy tomorrow. So it's monitoring what's going on, or that data is going to try to predict the future. Tomorrow, we believe it's going to be 21 degrees when you wake up in the morning. It's going to have a high of 46, cloud cover with 20% chance of snow. Now, what do we do when we look at all those numbers? The number that either reports on an event that happens, monitors an event that is currently happening, or attempts to predict an event in the future. Why do we not care about the numbers, but we care about the event?
That's interesting. And as you were talking, I immediately went to how relevant that weather app is in insurance, right? Because so many of the things, well, quite honestly, a lot of the decisions that are made maybe a year from now are based on claims, right? Like, so you have to think about all of the what ifs or the maybes that might come along with your business or your health or your house, when it comes to insurance and insuring your assets, right? The things you've worked so hard for, either protecting your family, growing your business, making sure your business doesn't fail. And you have to look out in advance.
Well, and those numbers are the indicators of either what happened, what's currently happening, or what might happen tomorrow.
Right.
But it goes to the event, and our brains only care about the event because the event can kill us.
Right.
The numbers can't. The numbers they mean absolutely nothing to us. And like you said earlier, you're a very accomplished communicator, and yet you look at numbers and it makes your brains hurt. It makes everybody's brain hurt. It's like, oh, what's that mean exactly?
Yeah.
And then we have to fabricate a story to put it into context, or we can be delivered a truthful story that places it in context for us, and we don't have to work for it then.
Yeah. Yeah, I always say to a lot of people I work with that are more of like our analytical number people, I say, I love numbers, but I hate them. I'm like, just make sense. I need you all to make sense. And so I guess I got the right job, right? So,
well, in all your spare time now, you're going to be launching a podcast.
Well, that is the goal. I have wanted to launch a podcast for my company, for the insurance industry, for years. In fact, I wanted to do it well before I even came to Leavitt Group, but Leavitt Group is it's prime for it. We have a great audience out there. It's varied, and insurance people are dying for something that is different and edgy and interesting.
So it won't be just for the Leavitt Group. It'll
funny.
Be for anybody in the insurance world.
The goal is to launch it and hopefully sometime early next year. My goal is by the end of Q1. Working title, I don't want to share it yet because I don't want any of my competitors who might be listening to this.
Sure.
They might steal it since it's not launched. But the context of it is going to be insurance kind of told in a more raw and using a story, of course, just in a more raw way. It is insurance by the numbers, but with flair.
Do you have an example of a story that been bouncing around your head and you're like, I can't wait to share this one?
Yeah. Actually, one of the things is one of the very first episodes that we're planning on doing as part of the podcast is about our brand and how the brand of Leavitt Group has transformed over the last few years. So this is how appropriate, right? We're into this brand Bewitchery. The brand has truly transformed to represent who Leavitt Group really is. And, our core values, are based in wisdom, compassion, and authenticity. And we want that to come out through the podcast. This is not your grandpa's insurance podcast. It is for the modern insurance agent and broker. Female, male, I don't care where you live, any geography. I want to serve it up light and make insurance interesting.
Give us an example of a story you're going to share.
So, I think the one about the brand is kind of interesting because what happened with this kind of transformative branding change is that we weren't really showing who our true selves were as a company, who our agents are.
How long has the Leavitt Group been around?
Over 70 years.
70? 7-0?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Over 70 years. Yeah, they've been around for a really long time.
So the brand has evolved over that time. You joined a couple of years ago,
yes.
And was that one of your pursuits? Is like we need to, or is that one of the reasons why they brought you in, is to help us?
Partially, yeah. So Tiffany, our VP, really had kind of took over the whole brand transformation. That was about a year and a half before I had come in. Which is why I really want to focus on that as one of our first podcasts, because brand is everything. Mm-hmm. You got to put that out there in terms of who you are, what you stand for. Like I said, wisdom, authenticity, compassion. People don't associate those three words with insurance, but that is literally the fabric of who Leavitt Group is. And so we're going to use that brand transformation story and the stories of our insurance brokerages and our affiliates across the country. We're going to use their stories and how they use that to push their businesses further, and how brand has played such a huge role in that success. Now, part of the reason I was brought in was to lead the communications efforts around affiliation, which is our term for mergers and acquisitions. Mm-hmm. And so they really wanted to grow their footprint in the East Coast. And I have a lot of B2B experience and helping brands and companies grow their footprint, products, product launches, basically anything new. So I came in to really help them with growing their name, building that brand awareness for them. And with affiliation, I'll explain that just a little bit, is that essentially you've got independent insurance agents, right? Or insurance agencies around the country, mostly in rural areas, much like where we are here today in Flagstaff. And sometimes they're looking for a national brokerage firm to partner with or to become a part of in order to get more national services, take some of those kind of, a lot of the things that you have to do as an owner, a business owner, do all of HR, IT, all those things. Instead, we take it off their plate. They get to just go sell insurance, do the thing that they want to do, and grow that their book of business. And so I really help our affiliation team grow their footprint through affiliation. Mm-hmm. So that's a big part of my role.
Gotcha.
So,
as one of the chief storytellers here and training and so forth, how do you collect stories and archive them and curate them throughout all of your different representatives and colleagues so that, or have you built a story bank that your team can rely on?
Yeah. So what we do is we use a lot of our in-person events where we bring in our, what we call agency co-owners. So because they still have a stake in their business. So it's not like a full out acquisition, which is an interesting business model. There aren't any other insurance brokerages that have that. And then Leavitt Group has a stake in it as well. And they partner together collaboratively to run and manage that business. What's cool is that we bring a lot of our agency co-owners together throughout the year in person to different events. And I always know when those are happening and I know who's coming. And I always set up time with my video team to get them to sit down in front of the camera, and we script out questions. We have them answer questions. And then, we edit it all together, and we create these really powerful videos that use those agency co-owners' stories and their experiences of affiliating with Leavitt Group, what that's felt like, what the experience has been, why maybe they chose us, and kind of just the whole kind of A to Z experience for them. And Mike, who runs our video team, again, he does these amazing, beautiful, powerful videos, but he does that for me for affiliation. And we use that in all of our marketing. all of it. And it ends up being here, Aaron's story about why he chose to affiliate with Leavitt Group. Hear Keith's story about what his experience has been since affiliating with Leavitt Group. And so we've got these very personal videos of our co-owners actually talking from the heart. And you can tell it's super genuine and they're happy to be there. And we kind of clip them together. And we've done some really great stuff with that. We have tons of them.
One of the areas that the suggestion, and maybe you're already doing this, is when you talked about your 3 pillars, you've got what? Wisdom, compassion, or is it passion?
Compassion.
Yeah. Wisdom, compassion, and authenticity.
Yes.
If you took each one of those as a category of story and go out to your team, send it out and say, one of our pillars is wisdom. Mm-hmm. Where have you seen this come up in business? Take us to a moment in time where this wisdom was obvious. When did it happen? Where did it happen? Who's the central character? What happened? What was the surprising outcome that underscores that this is what wisdom looks like, or is how it was expressed through us? See how many stories you can get on that. And they come in. The second one, of course, is compassion. Mm-hmm. Where have you seen compassion show up? Don't be general. Take us to a moment in time. When did it happen? Where did it happen? Who did it happen to? What happened? There was a surprising outcome that underscored compassion. And then, of course, you do that again with authenticity. And what can happen then is you can get 10 stories in each one of those categories. All of a sudden, you have 30 different stories that your people can use in marketing, in recruitment, retention, and it really builds on that overall brand ethos. I share that with you. You're probably already doing something like that, really more for our listeners than anything, that if you're wondering, how do you go about collecting these kinds of stories? Well, go to those brand pillars first. Carve them up into story categories and see if you can't find those little moments in time that express those different values and beliefs.
Yeah. As you're saying those words, I was thinking, yep, that one, and also that one, and that idea, and we've done that, and we do that all the time, especially in social media, on LinkedIn, because of more of the B2B space, of course, but also on behalf of our insurance affiliates who are primarily selling employee benefits and commercial insurance. Our audience is out there on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And that's how we don't actually ever talk about selling insurance. We use stories on our social to say, here is a story about compassion. Here's a story about wisdom. Here's an experience through video. We're not asking you to do something. We just want you to listen. Yeah. And then by proxy, they are like, oh, they're great. I think I want to work with them. So that's what we do. It's kind of an ulterior motive, quite honestly, but it works.
It is and it isn't because, the ulterior motive is we want to be their choice because we know we can help them.
Yeah.
And I'm presuming you're not selling insurance to people that don't need the particular program you're selling them. You're not just out to make money. You're actually out to help protect people. You said early on, it's a necessary evil. We all got to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And so you want to deal with it, especially in all the numbers game there, with people that you trust. Yeah. So all you're doing is building trust. Say, look, we actually care. You wouldn't be around for 70 plus years if you weren't good at what you did and actually took care of people.
Yeah.
So I push back on your ulterior motive.
That's okay.
I think it is about you're building trust and then you deliver on all those promises you make in your story.
Yeah, that was probably a bad choice of words. But yes, because that's not really who we are. Right. But yeah, it is kind of what happens though, right? Yeah. It just naturally we're kind of putting ourselves out there on those platforms and just showing the world who we are and how we serve our customers. And ultimately, that's what resonates,
Where can people go to learn more about you and your work in the Leavitt Group and see some of your storytelling in action?
Well, Leavitt Group, you can visit our corporate website, leavitt.com. That's LEAVITT.com. You can follow us on LinkedIn. Just look for Leavitt Group, Facebook as well, Instagram. I think we're on all the places, even Twitter still.
Mm-hmm. Still.
I have not taken that down.
Or they haven't deplatformed you yet.
No, we have not been deplatformed yet. We're not too active on Twitter. And then personally, I am very active on LinkedIn myself. Heather Pierce, you can find me out there. and follow me. I'm actually a creator, so I try to put some good stuff out there for
You do.
for
I
the
do
folks.
follow you.
Yep.
I liked your post the other day when you put out use the ABT, or the one you shared use the ABT
Yes.
in it. Remind me of what that was. It was funny.
Oh, it was the one from the National Park Service about the turkey.
That's right. The turkey
one-
standing at the
At the
right.
door, yes. Yeah, that one was good. National Park Service, big fan of their socials. They're pretty funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can follow me out there on LinkedIn. And I think that's probably about it. Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking the time coming into the office here. We were talking before the recording how we both have enjoyed getting out of our home offices and out into the beautiful pines up here in Flagstaff. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This has been great.
Yeah. And thank you all for listening to this edition of the Business of Story. If you like what you heard, feel free to share it with your colleagues, friends, family, customers, bosses, especially those sales teams that are all lost in the numbers and don't really believe in the story and the power that story can pack in your revenue generation and sales enablement. So please share this episode with them. If I can be of service to you, come on over the Business of Story. And of course, if you have not yet taken your quick online course on the ABT, check it out at businessofstory.com/ABT. Until next Monday, when we'll have another amazing story artist right here for you, like Heather, remember that the most potent story you'll ever tell is a story you tell yourself. So make sure it's a great one. Thanks so much for listening.